dental clinic success, what top practices do differently. Have you found yourself wondering what's it going to take to get your practice from here to here? Have you ever wondered what's the sort of secret sauce that causes some practice to grow and grow and grow and others to kind of stay the same for ages? In this video, I'm going to contrast what good practices do and what bad practices do and take you through 3 steps that will help you to take that journey. And make sure you hang on to the end because I've got a nice little freebie for you. But first, let me tell you a story. The reality is that I've worked with lots and lots of practices over more than 10 years. I've spent more than 10,000 hours consulting. I work with big practice, small practice, I've worked with specialist practice, general practice, city, country, corporate, non-corporate, you name it. And here's what I've learnt. Success leaves clues. Think about that for a second. What I've noticed is when we're working with bigger, more successful practices, there's lots of things that they've got in place that the smaller practices simply don't. Generally speaking, what we see is a lot more professionalism in lots of different areas. In other words, it's not a coincidence that they are bigger, that they are more successful. For example, they're not leaving things like their culture to chance. They're not leaving their HR to chance. They're not leaving their marketing to chance. They've been quite deliberate about these things and making sure that they're getting a nice high standard. For the smaller practices, on the other hand, what I notice is in many cases, they don't have a deliberate policy in relation to various things to do with HR. What's the kind of culture and environment we want to create? And what is our policy in relation to marketing? In fact, for many of the smaller practices, it tends to be totally scattergun. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Oops, the books are a bit empty. Quick, let's do some marketing. Oh, let's not do anything for a while. Then let's do some. And that kind of on again, off again inconsistency across lots of different areas, in my experience, is one of the key tells to whether we're going to have a practice that's going to be rapidly getting bigger or it's going to stay the same and maybe even go backwards. The first element I want to talk about is leadership. Just imagine there's a boat sitting in a harbour wanting to take off on a journey. The only problem is the boat hasn't decided where it needs to get to. Well, of course, what's it going to end up doing? It'll be, over here for a while and this way and then back again, and it ends up basically going around in circles. Well, it's the same with business. And what I find the top practices do is they've got a really clear idea of where it is that they're heading, and that comes from the leadership. If you're a leader in your practice and you're thinking to yourself, look, Angus, to tell you the truth, I just want to be the sort of top clinical, person in the practice. I don't really want to do any of this leadership. Either you need to find a very capable other, typically someone who's got skin in the game in terms of ownership, or unfortunately, you're going to be like that boat going around in circles because there's nowhere for it to go. Whereas with the top practices, they've got a clear vision on where they want to get to, on the kind of practice that they want to be, and it means that each person in the practice knows that. They've got their own position description, and that links into the one that sits at the top, which says, this is the direction that we're heading. So getting leadership right is absolutely essential. Put it this way, if your thinking is, I'm just going to abdicate that, I'm not going to do it, then unfortunately, you're probably going to remain down here. The second point is around systems. Whereas with the top practices, they've got a clear vision on where they want to get to, on the kind of practice that they want to be, and it means that each person in the practice knows that. They've got their own position description, and that links into the one that sits at the top, which says, this is the direction that we're heading. So getting leadership right is absolutely essential. Put it this way, if your thinking is, I'm just going to abdicate that, I'm not going to do it, then unfortunately, you're probably going to remain down here. The second point is around systems. Now, I've often referenced McDonald's because one of the things that strikes me about McDonald's is a multi-billion-dollar business, who knows, maybe even trillions, run by teenagers. Think about it, how is that even possible? Now, the fact is my son worked for McDonald's when he was in his teens. Indeed, he was a store manager at 19. And the only way that's possible is because of systems. What systems do is mean that there's real consistency in the delivery of the services that the business provides. And my question is very simply this, like, what systems have you got in place at your practice? Does each person, when they come and deal with you, get the same level of service? Or is it kind of good, bad, because there's no systems in place? And you need systems for lots of things. Like, have you got systems for how to answer the telephone? Have you got systems for what to do with new patients? How you greet people? What's the process of getting someone from the reception area into the surgery, and on and on? Because believe me, those little things, they add up to something big, and that's what the top practices do. Third aspect is about marketing. And I have to say, frankly, the difference between big practice and the small practice in many cases got a lot to do with marketing. Robert Kiyosaki, possibly the biggest selling business author of all time. This is the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, maybe 500 million books sold, says about himself something quite extraordinary. He said, "I'm not the best author." Just pause there for a second. A guy that sold almost 500 million books, and he says about himself, "I'm not the best author." And I don't think he's being unduly humble, because then he goes on to say, "I'm the best marketed author." And if you've got aspirations of having your practice up here instead of down here, then frankly, you need to take your marketing seriously. You cannot continue to do this sort of piecemeal, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit scattergun kind of approach. What the top practices are doing is they're really deliberate about their marketing. It's really consistent in terms of the message that they bring to the marketplace and the content that they're producing. Like on your social media page, do you kind of just go missing for a while? Or is it really consistent, the kind of content that you produce? What about across your different marketing channels, whether it's maybe through Google, through your social media, through your website, maybe it's through local sports teams, whatever it is that you're doing? A similar message is coming through so that everybody knows, oh yeah, that practice kind of, they stand for ... That consistency, taking it seriously, is a really critical indicator that will determine whether you've got a practice that's up here or one that's down here. Now, I did say I had 3 points for you, but in fact, I've got a bonus one, number 4, and that's around taking opportunities. The reality is that any marketplace, including dentistry, never stays the same, does it? I mean, in some ways that's good, in some ways that's bad. In some ways you'd like to set everything in place and it just keep going forever. Wouldn't that be amazing? But that's just not how it works. Of course, if you're behind the 8 ball, then what a great chance to catch up. But what I notice is that top practices, they take opportunities. The reality is there's been lots of changes in technology which practices have been able to take advantage of. And more recently, one of the trends that we're seeing a lot relates to practice taking advantage of outsourcing. It's getting a team outside the practice performing a bunch of those functions that the team inside the practice just never finds the time to do. That can really dramatically change your recalls, making sure you never miss a single phone call, and doing things like following up incomplete treatment. And the impact for the practice means less aggravation, less cost, and a real boost to the business. So there we have it, dental clinic success, what top practices do differently. Now, of course, I promised you a freebie, didn't I? So in the description, there's a chance for you to download our free self-audit competitor analysis. Here's the reality. One of the things that's stopping your practice going from here to here may just be the number of competitors that you've got in the area. So this tool takes you a few minutes to punch in some numbers. There's a lot of science behind it, and that will give you a bit of a ranking for what the competition's like in your area. And in addition, you'll go in the draw to win a free audit of competitors in your area so you can find out what's really going on. Finally, if you got some value from this video, then why not like it and take advantage of the free resources that are in the bio. Otherwise, see you next time.